Hello, everyone. I'm Ambassador Thierry, along with author John Chappelear, and this is the first of a series of six called the Daily Six Series Live. And I am honored to be with my friend John on this journey. And our first guest is, well, let's just say she's pretty incredible, right? Chelle Shapiro. Chelle, I'm so glad you could be the first guest.
It's an honor, Terry and John, to be here as your first guest in the series. And I'm excited to dive into this conversation with you today. This is something that I can certainly speak to probably for hours and hours on end. So yeah, it's definitely no surprise for me.
Very nice. Very nice. John?
Well, that's why we had you, Shell, so we could just let you talk all you need to talk. It's good. But the funny, well, we talk a lot, so I mean, we don't mind kibitzing back and forth. But the thing that's important for me, I mean, if every once in a while people notice that I'm wearing this little yellow bracelet, and it's a Daily Six bracelet for willingness, and I use it. I wear it, and I've been wearing it probably 15 years, I guess. Well, not this one, but they do wear out. But I give them the customers at keynotes and things like that. And it's amazing just the concept of finding a new teacher to teach you a new lesson and being willing to open your mind and your heart to some new ideas that, maybe just seemed ridiculous before. Or, for me, it was just, I was sort of this self-focused, completely dominated by my sense of hubris. And the idea of you being important or you being able to contribute or you being able to do anything just was so alien to me, because that's not what I learned in college. It's not what I learned in business school. It just wasn't what I had learned. And when that began to cost me a relationship with my wife, my kids, my business, everything else, it was like, well, maybe this is the wrong focus. So the idea was, okay, well, what am I willing to do? And the odd thing is that three different teachers showed up when I guess the student was ready. And they each taught me something unique about being willing to try some new things and to see how those effectively implemented could make a positive change in my life. And it's just been a great journey since, well, now it's probably 20 years now, but it's been a great journey the entire time. I've enjoyed every minute of it. How about you, Shell?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, really. When I think of willingness, I also think of a few other words. I think of open-mindedness. I think of receptiveness, and stick-to-itiveness also comes up for me. It's like that perseverance to keep going regardless of what the situation and your experience at hand is. It's like, are you just going to sit there and be comfortable in the discomfort, or are you willing to make a choice and a decision to do whatever needs to be done to change something? And so when I think about the open-mindedness and the receptiveness of that, I think about how I wasn't always receptive to other ways of doing things. And I'm somebody who I like to think that, like, I think outside the box. It's part of my creative nature. And I'm always curious to learn more. But when it came to receptivity, I just couldn't, I knew what I knew, and I knew what worked for me, and I knew what I thought didn't work for me, but I wasn't always open to challenge that and try new ways. So it's like when you think about that hamster on the wheel, going round and round, it was insanity to think that I could just push through and get a different result. But once I became receptive and more open-minded to the idea that something could change, it didn't matter what that something was, but I was willing to give it a try.
Right. I mean, it's one of those silly things. I mean, the concepts in the Daily Six, the reason I did them the way I did them, with the exception of meditation, quiet time, everything else is just a perception. Looking at things in different ways. I mean, it's not, things aren't going to change. I have to change with those things. I mean, people are still going to cut me off in traffic, and do I chase them home, or do I just go, oh well, they're probably in a hurry too? So, which am I going to do? Which am I going to expend a tremendous amount of negativity going, sort of ensuing? One of those teachers I talked about said, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? And that was a phrase I'd never even heard of before. It was like, well, of course I'd rather be happy. Then shut up and stop forcing your own way on top of everybody, kind of thing. And willingness is just being, like you said, learning to be uncomfortable with uncomfortable. You said sitting comfortably in your uncomfortableness. The idea is, if you look in business, there's a success curve, and it has to do with anything that you want to change. And it starts out, and I don't know how well this will work, but it starts out, you get very excited and everything's brand new and it's so great. And then all of a sudden this is kind of boring, and I think I'll go back to my old behaviors. And here is where everybody stops. This is why New Year's resolutions last till February. But if you push through that, then they will begin to come back up again, and your success is up here. It's that pushing through the small part after the initial excitement. It is, learning to say, this is new behavior, and I'm willing, as you said, persevere. I'm willing to persevere from being uncomfortable to being comfortable with this new behavior, to realize the value associated with it, because it wouldn't be entering my mind if I'm looking for a positive path and I'm trying to find a better way to live. Then these ideas would not be coming in. I do a program for people in recovery, families in recovery, trying to help them sort of reunite. And one of the things that I heard a counselor say once is, I can't fix this with this. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, this is what got me in trouble in the first place. This is what taught me, only the lead dog gets a view, kind of thing. And, versus, well, let's all pull together and pull the sled, kind of thing. And so it's a matter of refocusing on the things that are truly effective, not just for me, but also for my team or my group or my family or my organization. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Am I willing to do X, Y, Z? And whether I do it or not, something changes in me as I move forward. And how am I learning from that? And what does willingness have to do with it at all? Well, you have to will yourself to pick your foot up and step forward. You will yourself to scratch your forehead. Will is everywhere, okay? And you're in perfect control of it, because no matter what happens to you, no matter where you go or whatever, there's decisions to be made that only you can do. And Chelle, your journey in life, and you're authoring a couple of books, and has been, I've enjoyed reading them, okay? Perhaps you can talk about some of your journey and where willingness came through, because I think it's a fabulous story.
That's a great question. As you were sharing just now, and I promise I'll answer your question as well. As you were sharing just now, one thing that was coming up for me is another word, and it's a word that you often, Terry, associate with me. It's motivated. And this ties back to, this is how I'm going to tie this bit into my book a little bit, right? Because older Chelle, version 1 of Chelle, was very much like going through the motions, did what people expected of her, did what, needed to get done. But it was never for that old version of me. I was motivated by making sure others were good. It was never really, yes, I wanted that security, that safety, but it's never been primarily about money. Money is not what motivates me. motivation and willingness kind of go hand in hand, don't they? Because
Yeah.
as I think about it, I've realized what actually does motivate me and get me out of bed in the morning. What I am willing to do, and who I am willing to be around and learn from and listen to as mentors, as teachers, as confidants and friends. And that's the awakening for me in that has brought out levels 2, levels 3, and beyond of this new Shell as I evolve. Because at the time that I was writing that first book, Loving Yourself Isn't Selfish, How to Persevere Against All Odds, right? Like, I still had no idea about what truly motivated me, other than it can't stay the same. Things cannot go back to the way they were. And now the motivation is, what new journey am I going to be in front of today? Now the motivation is, what good foods am I gonna get to taste and enjoy? I'm very food motivated. I love cheese. It's what great people am I still going to surround myself with? What conversations am I going to have? The motivation and the willingness is different. And so as I've hinted before on previous lives, and I'll hint at it again, this is absolutely why there needs to be a second edition, a remix of sorts of Loving Yourself Isn't Selfish, because now there's a new level of Shell and I get to tell a different version of that story. And doesn't that just like speak volumes to willingness that I'm still pushing through and like persevering?
Absolutely. I mean, perseverance and willingness absolutely go hand in hand. And the idea that loving yourself is not selfish is something you have to become willing to admit to. It's a whole new way of thinking. It's a whole new way of living. And those are uncomfortable, and they have to be dealt with long enough and frequently enough so that you don't treat them like New Year's resolutions, but like true intentions to change our lives. Susan and I were talking about this morning. Susan's my wife, and we were talking about the idea. You were talking about a second edition, and I've thought about writing a second edition that would be for a particular group of people. I think actually one of the things I talked to Linda about was maybe we could do a daily 6 that would be focused on women and women's issues. But one of the things that I said to Susan, I said, the other group of people that seems to have the most trouble with peer pressure and issues where they just need some basic understanding of what to do are middle school kids. 7th and 8th graders trying to go into high school and have absolutely no idea how to deal with all the raging hormones and changes and everything else in their lives. And Susan sat down and wrote a 60,000 word novel about the daily 6 for 7th and 8th graders. And she's still tweaking it, and it's been about 8 years. So she keeps working on it. She's got it the refinement down to working, but she's taken it as sort of like, think of Mary Poppins does the daily 6 kind of thing with kids. And how to be loving and how to be forgiving and how to use quiet time to settle yourself down and not be drawn into peer pressure. And so and that was something that I never thought of before. And I have 3 kids that all went through these issues, and I didn't think of it at a time where they could have been of any value to them. I went through it myself and had huge problems in 7th and 8th grade, which led right into 9th and 10th grade in high school. So these idea of finding ourselves in situations where we just don't have the experience to handle them. I ran large companies, and 2 of the companies were the largest companies I had ever run because they continued to grow. And when I started there, they were bigger than anything I'd run. So every year was a new company, was new people, new locations. And these are things I had never done. And the only way that worked for me was to go find some mentors that could help me sort of understand this larger scale for a business. But the idea of asking for help, that was not something not something I taught in business school. Don't go ask for help. You're supposed to figure these things out yourself. And when I started asking for help and asking for directions and learning new lessons from new teachers, all of a sudden things became easier. They became less stressful. I had a place I could go and talk through solutions. And that's sort of the same kind of thing for you, Chelle. It's this idea of learning to love yourself, and the value associated with taking that effort, because frankly, you're worth it. That's we are worth the effort. So that's my take on that.
We really got something going here. It's going to be a fabulous live series. And, something came to mind about Susan's book. Number one, I want to read it, and it's geared towards teenagers because there is valuable life lessons for both this tween who has too many hormones and not enough slow down time in this current society with cell phones and everything else. But it is relative for all of us to be thinking about right now. What are we willing and not willing to do? You can be squashed down early on. Chelle's in her book about working for these tyrants, and she had to either be willing to deal with that and take it, or be willing to move on. And she moved on with great success. And I hold you in high esteem for that, because most people can't do that, Chelle. That was very cool of you. Can you expand on what was going on in those days?
What was going on in those days? Well, I was working 24/7. Even when I wasn't at the office, I was powered on. There was no recharging. There was no decompressing, taking time for myself. It was always work first. And if I keep pushing through, then maybe somewhere down the road, there'll be time for Chelle. But no, it was day in, day out, day, night, you name it. I really was working 24/7, because even in my sleep, which wasn't restful, I was dreaming about active projects that I was working on. And it got to the point where I call them dreams loosely, but they were nightmares. I was waking up terrified because I had missed a deadline for projects that I was making up. I was just so not in the right frame of mind. And they were so lucid. They were so real to me that I would call clients and say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm going to need another day on this. The material's not here, or this didn't show up. And they'd be like, Chelle, what are you talking about? We were never doing this. And I was like, what do you mean? You gave me this, you sent this email, and then I'd go back to my email and it'd be nothing. I was literally creating more jobs for myself in my head because I was always on. And so that's where Operation Separation came from, was this idea that I just could not keep banging my head against this same wall 24/7. And it wasn't sustainable for me. I wasn't going to take it. And that's only just one little snippet, an insight into what I was dealing with on a daily basis. So when I was willing to say, F this, something is going to change, and it's going to be for the better, because it can't get any worse than this.
Yes.
It became so clear.
Yeah. So right on. So right on. And that falls right into, John, what you were talking about of your gift of devastation. You were on the other side of that, running this and running around and doing all those kinds of things. And willingness to serve your people was present, but external factors just took that stuff away. And at a point, once it was taken away, where are you going with that? And once you realize that gift of devastation in your book, Daily Six, that your really profound journey began. Can you kind of expand on that?
Well, yeah, thanks, Terry. Gift of devastation is one of those gifts that you get that you really would love to return. But you can't, because it's not that kind of gift. It's, a heart attack or bankruptcy or divorce or death of a loved one, or, it's the kind of thing that never feels like a gift until you've moved through it. We were talking about this a little earlier. you have to move through the current issue, like where Chelle was. She was in this situation. And the thing that I talk about a lot is you always have three choices. You can accept it, you can leave it, or you can change it. And if you can't accept it anymore because you've tried and you're having nightmares, if you can't accept it anymore and you really can't change it, you've tried and it's not working, then you have to go. It is simply self-preservation at its most basic level. And a gift of devastation is one of those things that never seems like a good idea. I mean, I have friends who have lost loved ones and then have found a level of peace that doing meditation and bringing these lost loved ones back into a meditation or a thoughtful process, it helps them sort of work through and maintain a loving relationship with people who have gone before, or something where you've I used to talk about in keynotes. I said, it's amazing how good the parents are after the divorce. But you can be a good parent before the divorce. If you were good before the divorce, there probably wouldn't have been one. Everybody's a financial genius after the bankruptcy, but you don't have to have a bankruptcy. It's just that we as humans seem to need a tremendous amount of pain to move us forward. And that's what a gift of devastation is. It's enough pain to finally create an impetus to go in a path that we've never been on before. And it may be uncomfortable, but we're willing to do it because this just is no longer a tenable situation. I think that's kind of what you were saying, isn't it, Chelle?
Spot on. There was so much pain that I had that choice, but I had exhausted my other choices. I tried them. They didn't work.
Right.
The choice that was still in front of me was leave it, find another way, do something different.
Right.
And it really was the catalyst that brought me to where I am today.
And I think in our conversations, that's a really good spot where you are today.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. And, otherwise, if you'd have sort of been trapped in that cycle of pain and stress and too afraid to make a change, you'd still be there, still have a nightmare, still being upset. But you know what? Hey, that's just a career path. It's just a career path. And the answer is no, it's not. No, it's not. So, give yourself a break and break out of some of those molds, whether it's just, maybe it's just, being kind to yourself. Maybe it's just walk a little bit. Maybe you don't have to throw your entire life into a different channel or into a different path. You just make some small changes along the way, because small changes practiced consistently create dramatic results, but you have to practice them consistently. This is the difference between what we're talking about and, say, writing down save more money as a New Year's resolution. You need to make sure that you're following this intention and you're realizing that the action I'm going to take with this forces me onto a new path, and I'm willing to stay on that new path regardless how uncomfortable it is initially, because it's the path I really want for myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ooh, this could continue, ladies and gentlemen. This is only number 1 of 6, and we're really looking forward to this journey, John and I. And we'd like to thank Chelle Shapiro for being our lead guest and this wonderful takeoff on willingness. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did having the conversation. And stay tuned. We have 5 more shows to do. In the meantime, blessings, Chelle. Just so thank you so much, because this was so relevant to what's happening out there in these days right now. And so, John and I profoundly thank you for sure.
Yes, we do.
That's it for number 1, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to reading your comments and responding. Bye for now.